Okay, this is it. This is how to get better marks. I initially made this little presentation after I'd had a rather frustrating time marking a number of student works, and I felt like writing the same thing over and over to a number of students, a number of really bright students who I knew were capable, who actually weren't getting good marks. And I thought, well, look, it's nothing about your intelligent good thinking, and it's nothing about your enthusiasm, your passion, you're willing to work hard. There's just some simple tricks, simple things you need to tick off that you're not ticking off in your work. So the idea of this presentation is to show you those little points that will make all the difference to your marks, because it's so frustrating for us to see good work that we can't give high marks to. And I'm going to explain why we sometimes can't give good marks when you know you've done good work. We guess you probably know what you're talking about, but you simply haven't done it in a way that allows us to give you marks. So this is where we're going. Right. So this is something that I found on the morning of the presentation, which was about the credible Hulk. You won't like me when I'm angry, because I always back up my rage with facts and documented sources. And it's that backing up. It's that putting glasses on the Hulk that I want to actually see from students, not just a random rant. We actually need to have credibility. We need to work out what to do. And because this is about credibility and authority, there's a reference for the credible Hulk. Okay, in the unit I teach, we use APA 6. First thing to do is to find out what citation style is being used at your university. Okay, there's a few things that I don't know whether students actually realise this, but I do want to tell them. Markers already know you're clever and capable. You've got into university. If you're able to read a unit outline, use something like Blackboard, the chances are you are actually clever and capable. We know that. So you don't need to actually prove that. We're trying to give you marks here. We want to give you marks. However, we can only give you marks for what you show in your work, not for what we guess you know. And that's a big difference. You need to help markers give you marks, and here is my cheat sheet. This is what you need to do to help us to give you the marks that you're capable of. Okay, so how? The first thing to do is answer the question. The number of times I've marked students' work where somebody's given, it's a 6-parter, somebody's given 4 brilliant answers but neglected the other 2 parts. And then somebody who's given kind of average answers to the whole 6 has got better marks than the person who just didn't see that there were other questions. So make sure before and after you've completed your answer, you've checked that you've answered the question. Very simple, seems to be more easy to miss than I would have thought. Okay, know the marking criteria. The marking criteria is there for a number of reasons. The main reason is fairness. The other is consistency. So what we do is we give the markers marking criteria, we give the students the marking criteria. You should know from the marking criteria what we're looking for, and it also means our markers know that. Now, if you've done an incredibly intelligent song and we wanted an essay, we can't mark your incredibly intelligent song for rhythm and cadence and musicality, even though those features might be there in spades, because the marking criteria will say this many word essay and we're looking whether you've engaged with literature. So even though it could be a brilliant piece of work in itself, if it doesn't meet the marking criteria, we can't mark on it. Now, if you think about that, it's unfair to other students if we were going to mark your musicality and things that we knew were there and were very good, because they didn't get a chance to do a musical piece. So we can't actually, even though you've done something really quite clever, mark outside the marking criteria, because everybody else hasn't had a chance to strut their stuff in that way. Okay. Do what the question says, okay? You may know what it is, but make sure you actually have double checked that you're doing what it says. Use the conventions of academic writing, and this is more or less where I'm going with the rest of this. Okay. So often in my units, I will use words in the marking criteria like demonstrate, show evidence of. And some of the things that I'm wanting you to demonstrate or show evidence of are things like growth of subject knowledge, critical thinking, insight into material covered, engagement with disciplinary literature, and use of disciplinary terms and concepts. So these are the things that you actually have to have in your work. Now, the test that I sort of use when I'm sort of not sure about stuff like this is this. If I didn't know this student and was only reading this work, so I haven't read about your stuff on discussion board, I haven't spoken to you in class, if I didn't know who you were and all I had in front of me was this work that's meant to match the marking criteria, and if I was intelligent with a basic disciplinary knowledge but hadn't read any of the works referenced, then would you have shown enough evidence that you'd met the marking criteria? Okay, so if I'm not going to be able to fill in gaps based on the fact that you've been really articulate in class, and I know that you probably are more articulate than when you're writing, I'm also not going to fill gaps in that you've been really vague about something that I know is in the reading, and I kind of get what you're talking about, if you haven't actually demonstrated it enough that somebody who hadn't read that same reading would actually know what you're talking about. Okay, so there are two things to really remember. You can't presume either that your psychic is your marker is psychic and actually knows the content of material in ideas with which you're engaging, unless you've actually been clear which ideas you're engaging with. And you can't also presume that we're going to bring knowledge from the classroom into your written work. In fact, we can't do that. Your work has to stand alone. So please do remember that if there's sloppy thinking, we're not going to err on the side of, well, I know this person's kind of smart usually, so we're going to guess they know what they mean, because again, that's not fair to other students who are equally sloppy and work that's equally the same. Okay, so what you need to do is, for your own work, you need to be your own makeover artist. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how some work that doesn't have all the things that would get you lots of marks can be examined. You can add things, you can change things. So by the end of it, there'll be a piece that actually would get quite good marks, very good marks in my units. Okay, so let's start with a not okay. And I have seen work like this produced by students, okay? So something like large application software is fascinating and very useful for an information professional to know. Now, that's more or less about my subject, which is technologies for information services. However, there's a basic knowledge of terms. It could, however, have been written by just reading the topic title. In this unit, it has a topic that's called large application software. So one of the tests I use to work out whether I think you're demonstrating knowledge and demonstrating growth of knowledge is, if you hadn't actually read the topic, but you'd only seen what it was called, could you kind of be making things up, okay? I want to actually see some evidence that you've actually engaged with the topic materials and with what's being covered. So if you're so vague and so general, like that one, large application software is fascinating, okay, you could have written red pigs are fascinating also, and it would have made sense. But there's no proof. You've offered no indication to the marker that you understand why it would be fascinating and what fascinating means in this disciplinary context. Okay, so let's move on to something that's marginal. Knowing how to use large application software like the ILMS and the EDRMS is essential for a future librarian or records manager. Now, in this case, there's basic knowledge of terms. There's some basic evidence of reading. There's been some use of some of the terms we use. But even better is something that uses better academic writing. Knowing how to use large application software like the Integrated Library Management System and the Electronic Document and Records Management System is essential for me to learn as a future librarian or records manager. Now, you need to think about this because, again, you have to presume that the reader doesn't know what an ILMS is. And I want you to spell it out because I want to know that you know what an ILMS is. Okay, so what we're doing is we're getting you to demonstrate your knowledge, and that's what this does in a way that the previous version didn't. Okay, so there's basic knowledge of terms, basic evidence of reading, and some correct scholarly writing in that one. This is better still, and I'm going to go quite in depth with this one, so by the end of this you'll be very familiar with these 2 paragraphs. Okay, although the textbook claims there are benefits of an integrated library management system, ILMS, there's merit in the view of the clients served by the Horowhenua Library Trust that computers are not the most important things in a library. While knowing how to do things in an ILMS is definitely useful, few library staff would be involved with developing a new ILMS, and given how fast change happens in this industry, it's more important to learn about how librarians keep up with technology. Now, that type of rather more or less insightful, intelligent writing would be great in a newspaper article. It'd probably be good in a blog post because it's not being marked and the reader can fill in gaps in a way that a marker can't. So let's have a look at what the elements are that are present there and what elements are not present there and what can be done to improve it. Okay, so there's been a basic knowledge of terms. Okay, library management system, ILMS, great, that's disciplinary knowledge. But then if you read a little further, there's things in a library and how to do things. Okay, so while there's been some knowledge of terms, in this case, these are vague. This actually shows cloudy knowledge that you know more than the average person off the street who hasn't done all the reading that you've just done. So what you haven't done is demonstrated that you actually know what things in a library is and how to do things. So you need some specific examples. Okay, and we'll have a look at that later. Okay, basic evidence of reading, but not enough evidence. Okay, so there's some indication that you've read, and this is where it gets really frustrating, where students actually think that, well, if I just put a little bit of information in from the readings, I know the marker's read all the readings, therefore they're on my side and they'll know what I'm talking about. No, because the standard that we're using is, can you take a reading and actually explain the relevance, explain what it means, not expecting us as readers to fill in gaps. So let's have a look here. So it says, although the textbook claims there's benefits and that the client served by the Horowhenua Library Trust. Now, as your lecturer, I know what the textbook is, and I know that there's an article about the Horowhenua Library Trust, but academically that's not enough information to demonstrate engagement to a third-party reader. Okay. Is there critical thinking about the subject in readings? Now, this isn't bad. The way I explain this is the so what. If you actually are making a statement, there needs to be a lot of so what in it. Why are you telling me this? What's the point? How does it relate to ideas in the discipline? How does it relate to any argument you're making? You need to have lots and lots of so what. There isn't so much so what in this paragraph. There is an improved version coming up. Okay, so there's some so what. So the best type of so what when you're actually demonstrating critical thinking will be evaluative. So it will actually be explaining whether an idea or concept is a good one or not, and explain what the criteria are being used in order to make that evaluation and be valid criteria within the discipline. And to show both sides of the story means that you actually understand all points of view and that you've actually drawn your conclusions, understanding opposing views. So the reason why you want to have that is that if you were hammering a point home, somebody who was arguing against it could say, yeah, but they've missed this. They don't understand this other point of view. If you actually give lip service to the other point of view and say, well, some people do argue this, but it's invalid or can be undercut by this point, then you're showing that you understand all arguments and all parts of it, not that you've only read one article that was positive and you're regurgitating it. So it's really important, if you're showing critical thinking, to show that you know the opposition's point of views and you've still made your decision knowing that. And that actually shows us a wide lot of reading and good analysis. Okay, so here when we're looking at evaluative language, although the textbook claims there are benefits, okay, so an external source is listing good things, there's merit in the view, okay, so there's benefits, but actually there's another point of view that actually is good, that these things are not the most important, okay, so is this idea important? No, there's merit that it's not. Okay, while we knew these things are definitely useful, there's few library staff who would be involved in this given how fast change happens in the industry. So there's a lot of so what, okay? It's definitely useful, but lots of people aren't involved with it. Things change quickly. So not only are you evaluating the ideas, you're actually saying why. Okay. Now, what this paragraph needs desperately is to be more specific. It's going to get much higher marks if it's more specific. It needs to do with, it could do with some more why, and it could do with some more what. So let's have a look and see where the why and what could be added. Okay. Although the textbook claims there are benefits of, and what are those benefits? Why don't you list a few? Why don't you give me an authoritative source that tells me you've said the textbook claims there's benefits? Okay, why don't you list a few? And then you're demonstrating an understanding of disciplinary concepts, disciplinary knowledge, and communicating much better to me as a reader what the benefits are. You're telling me new knowledge, new information, because anybody off the street who has said, write an essay about the ILMS could write, there are benefits of an ILMS. If they don't tell me what they are, they're not showing that they understand what it does. Okay. There's merit in the view that computers served by the Horrifer Neurolibrary Trust, there's merit in the view of the clients served by the Horrifer Neurolibrary Trust that computers are not the most important things in the library. Now, why on earth are you telling me this? Okay. I know as your lecturer that you're saying that there's merit in that view because it's in a reading and an authoritative source. As your marker, unless you actually tell me who the Horrifer Neurolibrary Trust is and why I should even pay any attention to it, you're not making a point. While knowing how to do things in an ILMS, what things? If you actually mention cataloguing, circulation, whatever, you're actually showing disciplinary understanding and concepts. And it's a very easy couple of words to add in to get more marks because you're being specific. Okay. It's definitely useful. So why is it definitely useful to know about how to do things in an ILMS? Okay. Again, if you actually say why, you let the reader know that you understand what an ILMS is. Okay, few library staff would be involved with the development of a new LMS. Now, that might be true. However, as an unsupported assertion, you must have a source for that, okay? It can't be just your opinion because an academic writing, you need to be providing evidence, okay? So while it's good that you put that point of view forward, it's just an unsupported assertion which, although true, has as much weight academically as there are lots of bunny rabbits in the library all the time, or unicorns, or whatever, because neither there's lots of unicorns in the library, nor lots of library staff are not lots of library staff aren't involved with developing a new ILMS. Both of those, you've given me no evidence to back it up. Okay, so academically, they've got exactly the same weight because you haven't proven it. Okay. Given how fast change happens in the industry, so what type of change? Again, if you were told, could you write an essay about changing technology in an industry, you could put that sentence in about engineering, about geological drills, whatever. But if you actually gave examples of how fast the change happens, that's quite different because it shows that you understand the discipline and the information you've been reading. So all this is, these are valid points. However, you haven't demonstrated deeper knowledge than somebody who's just walked off the street and is faking it a bit. Okay? The trouble is that usually you're not faking it at all. You've done the reading. You're just being too vague for us to give you marks. So please keep that in mind. Okay, so in this passage, there's also problems with correct scholarly writing. Okay, although the textbook, what textbook? Okay, I'm a lecturer. I know which textbook. For academic writing, though, you actually need to put in the reference itself. Okay. The client served by the Horowhenua Library Trust. Okay, don't expect me to know who these people are. You're going to need to cite there. Okay, how fast change happens in the industry. Isn't this mentioned in the reading? It's mentioned in the Ned Potter 2010 reading that I get to people to read at the moment. And how librarians keep up with technology. Isn't there a reading about this too? Okay, so this gets really frustrating because by people bringing out these points, I know they've done the reading, but as a marker, I cannot give them marks because they haven't shown engagement and proved that they know what they're doing. And that's what I mean by little tick box things. Don't put the citation in, and we cannot give you credit for actually knowing. Put the citation in, and suddenly what you've just said is validated academically, and we can give you marks for your credible source. Small point, really important. Okay, so let's see another version of this where, let's say I've given this to a student, they've taken on a lot of my advice, and let's have a look at how that passage, what was essentially the substance of that passage, can be expressed in a way that will get better marks. So this is the type of makeover I expect you to do to your work. I expect you to look for vagueness. I expect you to look where you're not being specific. I expect you to look where you could have mentioned a reading. In fact, you are mentioning information you got from a reading, but you're not mentioning the reading itself. And I want you to improve that before I see it as a marker. Okay, so let's go with this one. Burke, 2016, pages 93 to 94, outlines advantages of a library using an integrated library management system, such as increased technologically savvy image and better inventory control. When the Horowhenua Library Trust developed their own ILMS, COHA, in 1999, however, their user survey showed that sometimes users do not want sophisticated computer gear at the expense of traditional services. Ransom 2009, paragraph 7. Balance is needed between better functionality and spending the budget responsibly. Using the COHA administrative functions gave me insight into how to check a loans table of an ILMS if I have to troubleshoot why a user can't borrow an item. I'm not sure I'll use the information around developing open source software, however, although it was interesting, as often libraries contract out all developments that involve digital information skills. In the reading of the first week of the unit, Ned Potter claimed that the library is changing more in the last 30 years than arguably in the whole of the rest of their history put together. Not surprisingly then, in her 2010 article in the ALA TechSource blog, she makes the point that keeping up with this necessary technology is overwhelming and huge and ridiculously hard, paragraph 9. Sheehan's advice that I know where to look, paragraph 9, when I want to know about open source software development makes me feel less overwhelmed. Right. Let's see, and I hope that you're actually spotting some of the bits where I said, oh, there was a problem back there, where I've added some stuff in. Let's have a look. Knowledge of disciplinary terms. Okay, boing. Integrated library system. Okay, we've got that. Better functionality. That's a library techie kind of phrase. Never hurts to throw appropriate language in. In fact, you should be. COHA administrative functions. Okay, that's a disciplinary specific way of describing. Check a loans table. Again, loans table is disciplinary language and concept that you've been learning about. Open source software is the same. Down the bottom, open source software development. Okay, so there you could have been really vague as you were in the last one, but there you've actually given me some terms that I can go, ha ha, I've got a marking criteria that says disciplinary terms and concepts, and there they are. Ping, ping, ping. Right, I can give them a good mark. Okay. Even if you had have been able to use those, not putting them in means you haven't demonstrated. Let's look at the evidence of reading. Okay, Burke, Ransom, Now this is a good reading because it's outside of the set text for this topic, which means you've actually been doing some external reading, which for your marker can look quite good. The Ned Potter, you can see that's included, and the Sheehan article. Okay, so yes, there's absolute evidence of reading. Correct scholarly writing. Okay, here what we've got is we're mentioning not the textbook. We're saying Burke 2016, that's the convention to identify clearly that text and where the information's from. I've got the page numbers there because I've done a direct quote. And a direct quote was sensible here because it's just a couple of words. It didn't need to be paraphrased, and it actually does bring Burke's sense into the paragraph appropriately. Better inventory control. In that case, it is paraphrased because in the textbook itself, it talks at length about what better inventory control means. So that's a summary. Okay, again, the Horror for Newer Library Trust, I've demonstrated that where I've needed to make points, I've used their words where it's relevant. Okay. Open source software, contract out all developments that involve digital information and skills, source page. Ned Potter done it via direct quote. Then Sheehan, I've done paraphrase and direct quote. Okay. So yes, there's very, very clearly correct scholarly writing there. Critical thinking and engagement. So let's look at some evaluation. Okay, there's balance needed between better functionality and spending the budget responsibly. Okay, so that's a commentary, but it's actually been supported by the points above, which talks about better functionality of the ILMS is the first sentence. The second sentence is about spending the budget responsibly. So not only have I given points, factual points about those two things, I've then added the so what to underline that, to say, look, there's a balance needed between this thing in my first sentence and that thing in the second sentence. Okay, I've been given insight into how to do this, so that's what made me understand. However, my evaluation is that I'm not sure I'm going to use it because of this reason. Okay, so it's not, I'm not going to use it because I don't care. It's because often I'm not going to be in a position probably because it's going to be contracted out. Okay, again, when I'm looking at the arguments in the Ned Potter article, I'm talking about what he actually did claim. I'm proving I've read it, and these are the ideas. Sheehan's got this idea. However, Sheehan's advice makes me feel less overwhelmed because it's about being overwhelmed, and it makes me feel less overwhelmed. So I've actually engaged with the ideas. What I've not done is just put a whole lot of ideas out or a whole lot of quotes and not given any so what about it. So that's really important with your scholarly writing. You might have done the reading. It's really important to make sure when you do your scholarly writing you have page numbers, references, citations, quotations. However, I still need to know what your thoughts are, and this is where there's been some evaluation and critical language. Okay. What I'm going to move on to is about showing clearly your own ideas, because this is another place where students fall down. And the main reason they fall down is because they're modest. Now, in academic writing, if you do not clearly indicate where an idea comes from, and that's via correct in-text citation, the reader presumes you're claiming it as original thought or research. Now, what a lot of students do is they will use really sophisticated quote from somewhere else, and they'll presume, well, look, I'm just a student. I haven't done any original research. The reader is going to know that I haven't done original research. These aren't my own ideas. Therefore, I don't have to be clear because it's obvious. I'm just a student. No, you're making academic writing, and in academic writing as an author, if there's not an in-text citation in that sentence, you are saying, this is my idea or this is my research. It doesn't matter how far away it is from your ability. The convention is, I am doing academic writing, therefore any idea, any research, any fact is my own original idea and research. And you need to back things up. Okay, so there are actually no marks given when we're looking at correct citation and engagement for using as many references as you can. Don't just chuck them in. I want to know what they mean. There's no marks given for quoting huge chunks when synthesis and paraphrase is more appropriate. Generally, if you're doing those quotes where you need to indent because you've done more than about 30 words, think really carefully whether it's adding anything at all to your work. I don't want to see a lot of those unless there's a really, really good reason for it. If you're doing close reading, for example, of what somebody said, you might want to say, Seth Godin has claimed that we're library Sherpas, and then give out the entire quote of Seth Godin and what his language was, so that you can then pull it apart and do an analysis. However, if all you're wanting to do is say that Seth Godin said that we were library Sherpas, just say Seth Godin said we're library Sherpas. You don't need the entire passage unless there's some reason. If you're going to bring the entire quote in, there wants to be a reason. However, and this is where it gets interesting, changing a few words so that what should be a quote is exactly the same length and says the same thing is actually being intellectually dishonest, okay? If you're paraphrasing and synthesizing, you are actually summarizing the idea in a way that makes it clear to the reader while still acknowledging that it's not your idea. However, if you actually just change the words as a mechanical thesaurus exercise, use a direct quote. I don't actually want to see you using what should be a direct quote and showing no understanding of what it says, but trying to sound fancy. Okay, so in the example that we had, I said often libraries contract out all developments that involve digital information skills. Now, the reason why I included the quote there is because the argument that I was making was that as a library student, I don't think I'm going to, in the field, need to know about open source software development, because libraries often do this. But what this doesn't say is that it contracts out software development. So I can't use Cricle as a reference. I can't say I won't need to know about open source software development because often libraries contract out software development. Because Cricle doesn't actually say that. It does say that they contract out all developments that involve digital information skills, which you could conclude includes the development of software. But Cricle hasn't said the development of software. That's why you want to make it really clear that you understand what Cricle has said. Because the chances are, even though you're meant to pretend that we haven't read the readings, we have read the readings, and we know when you're using a reference to back up something it doesn't say. And that's a really wrong thing to do. Okay, so if it's something like this, where Cricle didn't exactly say software development, but did say something that encompasses software development, use Cricle's words. Don't then change it so that you're making a claim that Cricle didn't make. Okay. So what are markers going to give you marks for? Your synthesis of the ideas. So have you read 3 or 4 sources that are all about digital privacy, and you've decided that the features of digital privacy, or what people need to be careful of with digital privacy, are A, B, C, and D. And those points have come from a number of readings. Okay, so that's the kind of synthesis where you see a commonality among your readings and you can express the ideas all together in one sentence or one paragraph from a number of places, saying, look, there's a common thread running through this and it's this type of thing. Your critical engagement with the ideas. So in the digital privacy example, if you believe that it's just too much to expect library users to always use HTTPS sites when they're browsing in a library on their private browsers, you could say something like, Jones suggests this. However, for these reasons, the fact that people don't bring their browsers in, there's not enough education about HTTPS, then you're showing critical engagement with the ideas, and that's what we're looking for. So if you've done your reading, can you actually generalize, summarize them? But also when there's a reading that you brought in because you're actually wanting to engage with it, what are your critical engagements with the ideas? the correct use of disciplinary terms and language. Okay, so don't just bring in a reading and not demonstrate that you've actually understood and can use correctly the terms and language. Okay, so it's up to you to demonstrate this, and let's look at how you actually demonstrate that the reading you've done, you understand in a scholarly way. Okay, so let's take this passage. Jones 2010 describes thingamies as blue, yellow and red. They have squiggly bits. There are more thingamies now than ever before. Thingamies are useful for potato peeling and Highland dancing, but Grace and Favour have pointed out that thingamies can be dangerous. Okay, in this passage, what I would first ask as a marker is, whose ideas are these? And these are the ones that have problems. Okay, the first sentence, Jones 2010 describes thingamies as blue, yellow and red. Okay, you've told me that that's Jones's idea. They have squiggly bits. Academically, you're saying this is your own independent research. You've gone out into the field, you've researched thingamies, and you know they have squiggly bits. If you haven't done that research, then you have to tell me where you got that idea from. Did you get it through reading? Is it from Jones? Or else you are saying, I have done original field research. I know thingamies have squiggly bits. And not only that, I've done that research as part of this work. Not, I've written a previous article about it, because you'd have to cite yourself. Okay? So what you're saying is, for this work, I have gone out into the field. So if I'm writing about a library management system and its development, and I say it was done in this technological environment, if I list the technological environment, I am saying I have done interviews with people in that field, I've looked at the program, and I know that that's what the original technological environment is. If you'd read that the technological environment was something from a third-party source, you must mention it there. Okay. More problems with, there are more thingamies now than ever before. Again, that's your idea. You're passing that off as your idea. Thingamies are useful for potato peeling and Highland dancing, but Grace and Favour have pointed out that thingamies can be dangerous. Now, we know that you've acknowledged that Grace and Favour, what year? You haven't put a year. Have pointed out that thingamies can be dangerous. Okay, so two ideas there. The first one, the colours of them, and the danger of thingamies are passed off and are authoritatively supported. The others are either passed off as your own work or unsupported assertions, neither of which give you any your argument any validity academically. So this will be clear. Jones 2010 describes thingamies as blue, yellow and red, page 24. I can go and look that up now. She claims that they have squiggly bits, page 33. It was a Jones quote. Okay, I know it's from the same article. She outlines later in the article that there are more thingamies now than ever before, page 35. Fabulous, I know where to go and look it up. I know it's not your idea. Now you have to keep doing this sentence by sentence. You note that we've mentioned Jones first. The second we started a new sentence and said they have squiggly bits, you cannot presume the reader knows that you're still talking about the Jones article, even though you haven't mentioned another reading, because you don't know whether that's your original thought or Jones's. You need to be really careful. You cannot put 5 sentences which say all sorts of stuff, put Jones 2010 at the end, and expect the reader to understand that all 5 sentences in that paragraph came from Jones. The convention is Jones 2010 at the end of a paragraph only applies to the last sentence. So every time you start a new sentence, you must indicate where it's from. That means sometimes you'll be saying, she outlines later. The article says, Jones also claims, as an author and an observer of such and such, Jones knows that or says that or whatever. Okay, so you have to keep putting that in to bring it back to where you got the source from. Thingamies are useful for potato peeling And Highland Dancing, but Grace and Favour 2011, I can go and look it up now, have pointed out that thingamies can be dangerous. Okay, and there's a page number there, so I can go and click it up. However, one more problem with this, the unsubstantiated claim, okay? Thingamies are useful for potato peeling and Highland dancing. Now that might be claimed in the Jones article, but you have not said that. You're passing this off as your own original research. It might be in Grace and Favour's article. We don't know. And that's the point. Any point you make, because this is academic writing where you're giving factual backup for every point you make, you cannot have something without proof and expect us to take it as a valid argument. Okay? Basically, every time you say anything, you've got this annoying little imp on your shoulder saying, prove it, show me, where's the source? And if you actually shut that imp up, you'll be doing the right thing. Okay, so let's summarise. Okay, to get more marks at university in an assignment, read the question, answer it, all of it, don't miss any parts. Know what the marking criteria are before and check against it afterwards. Remember, the markers want to give you marks, but you have to demonstrate what you know. We're not going to fill in the gaps. Be specific. If somebody off the street could have written this without disciplinary knowledge, then you're not being specific enough. And that's something that people often fall down on, really, because they actually just are being too vague even though they've done the reading. Use academic writing, because if you don't, we're not going to mark you highly. Clarify what's your idea and what's someone else's. Always do a check. Has every fact in every sentence got an authoritative reference to it? Show critical, evaluative thinking. It's not enough to give me a lot of ideas and indicate where they come from. I want to know your so what. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful and useful. And that's the type of thing that I really wish students knew about before I marked their assignments. So I hope that's useful.